How to choose the right KPIs to boost your data analysis. This video is part of the Ehrman List series, which aims to provide insights and advice on how to accelerate revenue and grow earnings in the IoT industry. Why would you want to start from scratch when so many things that I've tried have either worked or haven't? And I could provide great insight about why that's happened, why things worked, and why things didn't work to accelerate your time to be successful in the IoT industry. So when determining the KPIs that you want to use when developing your IoT project, or really just about any project when you're leveraging analytics, it's important to get a cross-functional team together. You need people from finance who truly understand the cost centers in your business. You need people from operations who understand how things work every day, where the longer processes are, where the manual processes are, where there are mistakes in data entry today that theoretically could be automated through the use of technology like IoT. And you also need your customer service department. What areas are your customers impacted by from your day-to-day business? Whether that's, for example, time to get your call answered if you have a customer service question, time from order to delivery. Understanding where your customers' pain points are also very important when determining your KPIs. So it starts with assembling the right team. You also, of course, would want someone there who's experienced with IoT and KPI development and analytics, but this should be a pretty good guide for you. Let's start with each. Understanding the cost centers, understanding the customer service pain points, and understanding opportunities for lost revenue. That's what the KPIs should be focused on. So the best way to do that is first look at what others are doing. So for example, one of the typical benchmarks in the transportation industry or the trucking industry is utilization rates. There are damage rates in the forklift business. Utilization rates tend to be a standard that's across many industries when you have high value assets. Downtime. These are all the kind of things. Customer wait time. They all affect either revenue, your operational costs, or your customer's experience and customer service. You can see what others are measuring themselves by. That's a good hint that you should at least be doing that. Then you need to figure out what improvements in those KPIs would mean. Of course, you need to understand where you are on those KPIs. So what are your typical customer wait times? What are your typical utilization rates? And often you're going to need IoT technology to even determine what your benchmarks are so you truly know where you're starting so that you can create your goals for your IoT project based upon where you are and where you want to get to. So for example, if you estimate that your assets are being utilized, let's say you rent out assets, and those assets are out on rent 50% of the time, so 3.5 days out of a 7-day week. Well, your asset utilization rate is 50%. So now the question is, by knowing where they are when they're not on rent, knowing whether or not they're available and that they're ready for use or unloaded and empty, those are the kind of things that can improve that utilization rate. So the next thing is to understand and quantify the value of knowing not only what your rates are, but a 1%, 5% improvement in those rates and what that would mean to your business. That's where the financial experts come in. They need to really understand what you're doing today, how much it's costing you from an execution standpoint, and how much you would save if you were able to improve those KPI benchmarks. Another area that's very important when you're searching the market for companies to work with from an analytics standpoint is perhaps finding companies that have data already from your peers. So it's not only what KPIs your peers are using, but it would be even better if you had data in the database from whoever you're selecting to work with from an analytics standpoint that has utilization rates of your peers, downtime of your peers, customer wait times of your peers. The benefit of that is not only will you know your own rates, but you'll be able to determine what percentile you're in. How do you compare to others in your industry? That's good because it allows you to understand what the potential is for improvement. So for example, you may never be able to get above a 60% utilization rate if you're at a 50% utilization rate today. Maybe that's the best that can be done, or the benchmark, the top performer in your industry is only at a 60% utilization rate. Well, that's very important to know so you don't spin your wheels and try to get to a 70 or 80% utilization rate when that's probably not even possible. But let's talk about cost centers for a bit. I'd like to turn it from something theoretical to something real, practical, and actual. So let's say, for example, you own and operate a fleet of forklifts. And we'll talk about maybe doing it on one shift. So if you have a fleet of forklifts who are being driven for one shift, let's say you have 100 forklifts, and you're paying each forklift driver $50,000 per year. That's not unheard of, by the way. Forklift drivers are typically the highest paid person in a warehouse or distribution center because it's a pretty dangerous job. 50,000 times 100 is $5 million. So what that means is every 1% you can improve that utilization rate would save you $50,000, 1% of 5 million. So that's where you can very quickly do the off-the-cuff math to evaluate the cost of improving your utilization rate. One thing that ID Systems used to also do is sleeper rate. For example, what percent of the time is someone logged into a forklift but not doing anything? They're standing on the truck, but they're not moving any material. Typically, the customers at ID Systems had a 10 to 20% sleeper rate. Well, again, if you can improve that by 1% and you have 100 forklifts, that's a $50,000 savings. They're all targeting that utilization rate. So an easy way to get at the utilization rate is to look at why those employees are sitting on those trucks 20% of the time not doing anything. So in order to do that, you got to really dive into the details. Look at maybe the 10 operators that are working in shipping for the day and see where their KPIs come out on an individual level. What is their sleeper rate? What is their utilization rate? Look at your top performers and measure them against your bottom performers, and then identify why those top performers are so much higher than the bottom performers and close that gap. Think about it. If one is at 40% and the other is at 60%, all you're driving for to save $50,000 is a 1% improvement across the board. That seems very realistic when you're looking at these types of KPIs. You also may want to look at customer service, improving your customer service. The best example I can give you of that is with the car rental industry. When ID Systems was automating the rental and return of cars, we knew when the car returned to the lot because we had a GPS device on that car. So you could look at the time from returning to the time the rental agreement is printed and see how much time that customer was waiting on that lot. If it's more than the time that you would want or expect, then you can go in and figure out why that is. Is it happening at certain times of the day? Is it happening when certain people are working? Do you not have enough employees in the return area? The beauty of a KPI system is understanding first those benchmarks and then coming up with the technology to measure it. That's when a customer returns their car. When you rent a car, often you have to wait at a rental gate to check out. You can look at the time the customer starts the car on the lot, track them on the lot, and see how long it takes to get off the property. You might need to open up more than one gate. Maybe when you see the wait times getting in excess of 3 minutes, you in real time go out and make a change and open a second exit gate. So that's how KPIs can be used in real time to be able to affect customer service. You also have the ability to achieve revenue growth. So for example, you can have a KPI, I'll just use two, container rental rates. So if you own intermodal containers and they're on rent 40% of the time, if you can get that up to 41% of the time, you can look at the time that's affected and your rate per day and automatically calculate what improving the rental revenue rates or utilization rates would mean directly to your bottom line. That's just a nice example about how you can use KPIs to determine metrics that you can track to grow revenue. Again, very important to establish KPIs. What's great about it is once you have the KPIs established, you can use them as benchmarks for your project. You could set and identify where they are when you started. You can look at where they are after 3 months, after you've made improvements, and then attribute dollars to those savings because that's what you did up front. Every 1% equals $50,000. So if you start your project and you're at 50% utilization and you get to 53% utilization, it's very easy to demonstrate exactly what you just saved the company. So, critical. Create the KPIs, but also create the benchmarks. The benchmarks are where you want those KPIs to go. Those benchmarks could be based on a lot of things. One, your top performing operators, your top performing facilities and top performing plants, your top performing shifts, your top performing managers, even your peers in your industry if the analytics company you're working with has data from your competitors in there. It has to be anonymous, I am sure, but it is another benchmark that you can look at to try to see where your goals should be. Basically, the tools are there today from a software and analytics standpoint to really drive savings, drive revenue growth, and drive improvement in customer service through the use of analytics data and KPIs. It's a really good time to come up with those types of business changes to help you achieve your year-end objectives from both a cost standpoint as well as a revenue standpoint. If you need any help trying to get there, please let me know. I'd be happy to help. Click on the link below to follow me on social media, leave a comment on your own experiences, and ask any questions you may have. I look forward to keeping you updated.